Welcome back, friends. As you can see, I've got another item on the workbench. It's another original prop. This time it's from another science fiction series, Red Dwarf. Normally I cover Doctor Who props, but today, I've got this here, so I thought I might as well show it to you. It's quite a nice piece, and if it looks a little bit caddywampus here, going up and down, that's because it's an effects piece. Essentially, it's only being held together with string, and I'll come to that a bit later on, but this was designed and built to fall apart. So if you stick around, I'll show you all about this. Right then, just to get you up to speed, this is a Bazookoid from Series 3 of Red Dwarf. It was from an episode called The Last Day. Now, in the storyline, Robert Llewellyn, playing Kryten, he was going to be replaced by another robot, Kryten himself being a robot. And for some reason in the storyline, this other robot comes in and they really don't want him to be there, so they decide to try and attack him and destroy him. And in the process, Kryten, played by Robert Llewellyn, as I said, uses this very gun to try and kill this other replacement robot. In the process, he doesn't know what he's doing and he presses the wrong button and this thing just explodes and falls apart in his hand. Now, this is seen in just literally one shot. I mean, it's in a sequence, but just when it explodes, they cut to this particular version of the prop. It is built exactly the same as all the other hero Bazookoids, but this one is rigged to fall apart on cue. Now, there is an activation button in here, and basically the way it's built is it's in parts already, so it's all held together by strings tethered through into the inside in here. And when this button is pressed, a little detonator goes off and it cuts the strings, the whole thing just goes and falls apart. So, that's where we're at. Let's have a look at some of the details, shall we? Well, it makes sense to start at the beginning, so why don't we start at the business end? So here we are. This is basically all plastic. Pretty much every last piece of this is plastic. But this part here is a PVC couplizer, or a pipe reducer, as is this piece here. That is mounted onto a piece of ABS tubing. Now, this is standard stock from a company called EMA. They do all sorts of model parts and pieces for, well, visual effects and what have you. Anyone who needs to build anything modelly. So this piece here is also, this is EMA tubing, as is this. This section here, which is clearly broken, as you can see, this is a Rizzler air freshener. Now, it's the stubbier version of the exact same type that was used on the old 1980s cyber guns. Now, you'll see it is broken, and there is a reason for this, and that's partly down to the string that goes all the way through that holds it together, as that string there. What's basically happened is the forces are being pulled this way, and it's basically broken through the top of this air freshener, which is now sitting there. So anyway, there's another pipe going all the way through that goes through to the end, which you can see there, and that's where the end of the string is, holding the whole lot together. And obviously you can see there's a spring here. This was set under tension, so when the thing was detonated over on this button here, once the string is released, this forces this whole section off that way, and there's a similar mechanism on the back shooting this bit off that way. But anyway, we'll come to that in a minute. So, more EMA tube, spring. This is, again, a larger diameter EMA tube. The detailing on here is just plastizote. These days you would call it, what do the cosplayers call it? Something foam. It doesn't matter, it's just foam. What did they call it? Oh, it doesn't matter, it's foam. Craft foam is what you would call it, I suppose. So yeah, these details here, so this is craft foam, this is craft foam. I'm going to call it plastizote if you don't mind. Bits of tubing down here. There's a wooden disc here holding all this together. So as I said, this tube goes through here, through this piece of wood here. It actually goes through this bigger tube and into the body in here. This here is, again, EMA tubing. This is your plastizote again. And these little studs are, well, they're studs. They're just stuck on. You could buy all of these. Like most of this stuff, you could buy it quite readily and quite easily. So this would have come from a place like B&Q or Texas, whatever was around at that time. The main body is a vac form. It's quite a simple box, as you can see, but it's vac formed just like the hero props from styrene. Here's a piece. This is actually missing a piece. There should be another section sort of sitting out here with more of this stuff on it. Yeah, but that's one of the few things that are missing. There is also a handle that should be in here. That's not here. I think that is around somewhere. We do have that, but from what we understand, there's not this bit here. That's completely gone. So anyway, more tubing here, a standard handle grip for that, and yep, good old BBC using doorbell switches for, well, for this bit. As I said, this is vac formed, and on top of it is some very basic stuff. It's keyboard switches from an old PC. These are panel indicator lenses, and it's the same on the other side, just basically pushed in there. The Hero versions have a little bit more detail here. There's basically a plate and a rim of some sort around it, and this thing here would have been a paddle switch, you know, a clicky on-off switch. There's one here and one there, but because this is the non-illuminated version, they didn't bother putting any lights in this, and they didn't bother to put that switch. It's just a lump of plastic there. On the back here is some more plastizo. This is just hiding the seam. So there you go, there's the very ugly seam from where it was vac formed. So it was vac formed, you know, in that half and in that half. So essentially, when they made this, actually what was really done was this whole section from here was vac formed in one piece, as was that side. Then they cut it down there to give an, you know, an entry port. And yeah, it's quite basic. It's very typical BBC, especially of the 80s and 90s, where they used off-the-shelf stuff and didn't really put any effort into hiding what they'd done and how they'd done it. It's lots and lots and lots and lots of very identifiable parts. This is sort of why I have a love-hate relationship with this kind of, or this era of effects work. You know, from over here, you know, the profile looks good, but when you get up close, it's kind of obvious how they did it and what it's made from. Anyway, let's have a look at the inside. You'll have to bear with me for a moment because I've got to put the camera down. Alright, so here we are at the back end, and as I said, this thing has been chopped apart. Just so that this thing can literally blow apart for a comedy gag. It's a very simple mechanism, and I would like to show it to you. So, as I mentioned earlier, you can see this string. This is not the original string. This has been added much later just to keep all of this together. So it sort of looks intact, but it is part of the mechanism. No, had this been the original string, which it isn't. But, you know, this bit comes off, and let me just plonk this down here for you to see. So here's the insides. It's all very, very basic. As you can see, this string is attached to this piece, it's attached to this piece, and it goes all the way through to the very end of the barrel, as I showed you earlier. And it's all kept under tension. Now, this plate here contains a guitar head with the, I don't know, I'm not a musician, so I don't really know what you call them, but it's the little turning knobs that you use to tension the strings so you can tune it. So they're all in the back there. So all of these strings would have gone through these little hooks and eye hooks and what have you, and then gone round into the back of there. And then in the side here is a plate, which is on the side here as well, and you could gain access to it. So you'd thread all of these, well, threads, it would have been nylon threads, through all this, tensioned it up, and then that would have held it all together. Now, as I said, on the other end is a spring to shoot the barrel off. To help shoot this back end off is this spring. You would push this back end onto here, and then through the access hatch on the side, you then tension it all up and it will be primed to go. The way it was actually activated via this little switch up here is, let me just show you. You'll see there's two 9-volt batteries here, or there would be two 9-volt batteries. Now they are wired in series, giving 18 volts. That 18 volts is supplying this with power. Now these are two, they're not squibs, because a squib would be made of cardboard and would explode outwards. You could call it a detonator, I suppose. These are brass tubes with black powder in it and possibly some sort of metallic filament in there, maybe titanium, probably not magnesium. More than likely it's going to be aluminium powder. Now what that would do is when it explodes, it will give you a shower of sparks. But because it's in brass, rather than exploding outwards, it will explode out the front here. Now that means it's there ready to cut something, and obviously it's there to cut what is essentially this cord. Now back then it would have been something like a nylon cord, which is plastic, and this would have no trouble cutting through that. So you press this button, it takes its power from here all the way down through these go off, gives you a nice visual array of sparks coming out of this thing. It cuts through the cords, and then because of the spring here and the spring at the front, the whole thing just goes and falls apart. It's really quite crude, but it's effective, and it's only needed in one shot, and I actually rather like this. If you were to restore this, I would probably say you'd have to more than likely remove that if you wanted to have this thing completely displayable, because at the moment the springs are making it impossible to sit back together again. It all has to be held under tension, but I know some people wouldn't want to do that, so whoever ends up owning this, they can make up their own mind on that. But yeah, that's how the mechanism worked. Very, very simple. You know, you don't need anything more complicated than that. What's that you're saying, Sparehead number 2? That I should make a replica of this thing? Do you know, I think that's a really good idea. I mean, it's here, why not? I can measure it. And you know, the best thing is, I know where the moulds for this thing is. Yeah, that's a good idea. What do you think? Should I make a replica of this? Maybe I should. Not now, because I am busy doing other stuff. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed seeing this little original prop. I say little, it's not that little, it's about 3 foot long. But I hope you've enjoyed seeing this. It's something different for the channel. It's a Red Dwarf prop. But anyway, I'm going to get off and get on with my actual work, which is why I'm a bit filthy at the minute. And hopefully you'll join me in the next video. So until then, stay safe, and I'll speak to you soon. Thanks for watching.